Hello and welcome to Wild, Wise and Curious. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Lou, and we're really glad that you're here with us today.
You can listen to Wild, Wise and Curious wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you'd like to watch the conversation too, you can find us as a video podcast over on YouTube.
Let's get into today's conversation.
Hello, welcome Kerstin.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Kerstin. My pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Fantastic. So, Kerstin, how did you come to realise that you were in perimenopause? Look, I don't think I realised for quite some time actually, and maybe like a lot of other women that I've spoken to. I was probably about, I'll be 57 this year. So I must have been probably 53, close to 54. And I really started to notice physical changes, as in, and I'd never been a sickly person. I'd never really had flus. And so once I started getting symptoms of something, it became quite alarming to me. At first I was getting sort of like heart palpitations and a bit of shortness for breath. And just every now and then it would happen. I'd go out to lunch with friends. I'd be sitting there and the next minute I'd eat something and I'd start getting like this adrenaline rush and thinking, what's going on? And I thought it must have been a heart condition. And probably this went on for a couple of months. And then anyway, actually, I was at work and I felt like I was going to faint. And I sort of slipped out of my chair and a person that I worked with, they said, look, we're calling the ambulance. They took me to hospital and it sort of worked out that I had a bit of an electrical issue going on with my heart. But the cardiologist said to me, a lot of women your age get this. And I said, what do you mean? He said, women that are in perimenopause or menopause. I said, I don't think I'm in menopause. And he said, well, you're 50, close to 54. He said, you must be. I was like, and I was thinking, I don't have hot flushes because that's what I thought it was.
Yes, really common that we think it's only that.
That's the only information I'd ever really heard was, you get some hot flushes. And I couldn't really get any information from my mother because she'd had a hysterectomy when she was quite young in her 30s. So she probably went into early menopause, but, it wasn't spoken about. She didn't talk about it. She didn't know what was happening.
And it was surgical, so different to what you were experiencing.
Exactly. So then, everything then to me was related to, I've got a heart condition and that's why I feel dizzy. That's why I'm, have lots of anxiety. That's why I'm getting sweaty, all sorts of things. And anyway, it turned out I had to have a little procedure that sort of fixed up the electrical current in my heart to make sure that it was, and I'd never had a problem since. But I did notice after that, I was still getting heart palpitations. I was still feeling like unwell. And then I thought, I've got a chronic illness, and I had been to the doctor quite a few times since the heart business had happened. And I had blood tests and he's saying, your cholesterol's high. Cholesterol, I'd never had high cholesterol in my life.
Right.
And I said, wonder what that would be from. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got all these issues now. I've got high cholesterol, I feel. And then I started, what I presume now and what I know now, I started getting like a health anxiety. I was so hypersensitive to everything that I was feeling. And so I was just basically a nervous wreck. And then I went back to the doctor and I said, look, I either need anxiety medication or something. I just don't feel myself. I can't remember things. I'm constantly agitated. I feel sad. I feel depressed. Actually, I don't even feel anything. I have no joy. I don't want to go anywhere. I was, isolating myself. All I wanted to do was just come home from work and go to bed and just scroll on my phone and just try and keep my mind occupied. And then he did another blood test, and I've been to the doctor so many times. I spent so much money. And then it came back and I said, look, what are my hormones? What's going on? Because this is what the cardiologist said to me, that I might be in perimenopause. And he said, oh, no. He said, you're in menopause. And I said, since when? And he sort of looked back through his blood test and he said, at least for 18 months now, because I hadn't had a period for a long time, probably over 18 months.
And I just like, well, what does that mean? What do I do? Is there something I need to do now? And he said, oh, there's HRT, you can go on to that. And I said, do I need to? Like, is that going to help? Is that why I've got anxiety? Is that why I've got depression? Is that why I feel like crap all the time and I don't want to get out of bed and I've got no energy? And he said, possibly.
Yeah.
And I just thought, does anybody know, like, what's going on here? Yeah. I just felt so lost and so isolated. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, look, do you have these symptoms? And she's a year younger than me. And she goes, oh, she said that the sweating and the hot flushes are really bad. And I said, what are the hot flushes like? She said, I get really bad palpitations before I get a hot flush. And then I just sort of feel really burny in the face and the neck.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I have been getting that, but I thought it was my heart when I first started noticing it. And she said, oh, yeah, I get that. And then, I get it, I can get it up to 10 times a day.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And I said, and what are you doing about it? And she said, oh, my doctor's given me this, this, and this. They gave me all this information. She told me I needed to do these things. And so I said, well, look, obviously my doctor was good in a general sense. Then I had to think, I need to actually meet someone, a specialist that can talk to me about menopause, because I started looking on the internet. I started doing searches for in my local area, is there anyone that, and I couldn't find anything.
Wow.
I could not find anything. And I rang a gynecologist and I said to her, because all this stress that I was going through, all of a sudden, I had a bleed. I started bleeding.
Okay. Yeah.
But, my health anxiety went through the roof. I thought, oh, my God, now I've got bloody, ovarian cancer or something. Yeah. So I rang a gynecologist, was referred there, went and saw her, and she said, look, she basically said, you can get on HRT, and she went through it all, and she explained everything to me, and she said, look, I actually think what is happening in your body, what a lot of women don't realise is when they go into menopause, the stress of it, of the unknown, exacerbates your symptoms like, tenfold.
Right.
The anxiety, the hot flushes. And I know I started really ramping up in the hot flushes and the night sweats and the not being able to sleep when I couldn't understand what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And felt so alone, and I said to her, why is there no information? We're not a third world country. This, millions of women are going through this. And she said, oh, I get a lot of referrals from the doctor and so forth. I said, but I looked on your website. I said, you're not advertising, you're not talking about menopause health or anything like that. Anyway, she said to me, look, I know someone who just specifically works holistically in women's health.
Okay.
And she's an expert in menopause. Well, I tried to get in to see her, and it was like 6 months waiting list.
Wow, okay.
There is actually Menopause Australia, there's an association, but trying to get into them is like 8-9 months, whether you've got private health insurance or not. And I do have private health insurance, and I just couldn't get in. Anyway, I said, well, I'm going to go and see this woman. I don't care if it takes me a year. I need somebody who's going to sit with me for an hour and actually be able to listen to what I have to say about this is what I'm experiencing, because as you know, everyone experiences different things. And I've got some friends that go, oh, yeah, I get a few hot flushes, but, it's no big deal, and they're not experiencing anything else. And I feel like I was going through so many different changes that I couldn't understand, that it led to such anxiety for me that by the time I went to see the specialist and I spoke to her, and she said to me, you know what, Kerstin? She said, I think you've got like almost a post-traumatic stress from the trauma of all of a sudden these changes are coming to you and nobody can tell you what's going on, and you're just silently going through this and thinking you're going mad. My father had a lot of mental health issues, and I thought I inherited them. So I thought, great, I've got a mental health issue now, which I actually do, I had anxiety and depression and health anxiety. And the other thing that started to turn up after all this time of chronic stress, I finally went on HRT, which was wonderful in the sense of, especially for the hot flushes, that was the major thing that I really noticed. But when I started it, and I started the progesterone as well, because I've still got a uterus, the progesterone really knocked me around. And I think a lot of women do have a bit of a sensitivity to it. And it sort of numbed me. It numbed all my feelings. I just felt really sort of low and down about it. And then my gynecologist said to me, oh, well, we'll try the Mirena. We put that in, and the coil, and that, a lot of women find that helpful. Well, that was the worst thing I did, because I just had incredible headaches from that.
Right.
My specialist, the menopause specialist, said to me, look, you need progesterone. That is a contraceptive. That is a totally different thing. That is not going to, yes, it will protect your uterus, but it's not also giving you what you need. So she said, stop taking them orally and take the progesterone vaginally, which then doesn't go to your liver, and it can be a softer approach.
Yep.
And I found that to be very helpful. So by the time I sort of navigated this, it must have been at least close to 2 years.
Wow.
And that's quite common, isn't it? The fact that it's taking us so long to navigate something that we should all know about way before it happens.
Before it hits. My doctor should have said to me, because I do routinely, every 6 months I go and get a checkup, I get blood tests. He should have said to me, you know what, Kerstin, you're in perimenopause at the moment.
Yeah.
And, when you get to menopause, and not that I expected him to be an expert in it, but I did expect these are your options. Maybe go and do some investigation now. Maybe go and try and source someone that you can talk to about, when this eventually happens. And another thing, I recently started going to a dietitian, because what has actually occurred is that I've been so stressed out for so long and living in this state of fight or flight. That I've actually impacted my digestion.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The vagus nerve. And I really didn't know about that gut-brain connection sort of thing that was going on. And because I was so stressed, my whole digestion sort of stopped. And I was getting constipated, shocking reflux. And I didn't know what that was about. And the dietitian said to me, look, when you're so stressed, these are the things that your body starts doing.
Yeah.
Your hormones start going everywhere. Even on the HRT, your body's still, like, people think it's a wonder drug. Look, and it certainly has been when it comes to hot flushes and probably some of the other symptoms that I've been going through. But I've really learnt that I can't just rely on that. I actually have to physically do things to support my health. I need to eat differently now. Yeah. I can't have a glass of wine. I mean, I used to love a gin and tonic, come home from work, have a gin, sit down, have a husband, or, go to dinner with friends. I can't have it. Gives me the worst anxiety. And I just get anxiety from it. So not only have I physically changed, but my lifestyle's had to change. And I know I'm going to be who I used to be. And that's okay, because now I'm educating myself in how do I get the best out of my body now? How do I start looking after my nervous system? Because I feel like I've stuffed that up with all my stress and anxiety. My whole nervous system has been on high alert. And, I'd never had stomach issues before. So the stress and the hormones is a really bad combination. If you don't educate yourself and get the support you need.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted to pick up with you, Kerstin, because initially you had that the heart palpitations, and you realise that you've got the electrical impulses. And I think that's something that a lot of us do struggle with, is the heart palpitations, and thinking, I myself have recently been to the hospital and got my heart checked out, because you start having these symptoms that you're not used to having. So at that point, you were told by the consultant that you're in perimenopause, menopause. But then, because you're going through all this stuff with the heart, that kind of got pushed aside, didn't it?
Yeah.
With that,
Yeah.
And then, but then it sounds like when you went to the general practitioner, it was you that kind of said, "Oh, could it be hormones?" And then it was just that, "Oh yeah, well definitely." But how were you supposed to have known?
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I work in a professional environment, and I work with a lot of young women, but I also work with older women. And I was talking to a woman from work one day, and she rang me and asked me for advice. And she was probably a little bit younger than me, and she said, "Oh, you know, I've got brain fog, all these things are happening." And my boss said to me, "You know, I want a medical certificate from you to explain to me why you need some adjustments at work, or why you can't work full time and you've asked to work part time for a period." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "But I'm too embarrassed to say, you know, look, I'm going through menopause, and, you know, my brain's not where it used to be, and I'm really struggling."
Yeah.
And I thought, this is another woman saying this to her. You know, I thought, no, this is not okay. So I sort of worked on a scenario work that maybe we could do a bit of an educational, you know, there's so much about diversity in this group and that group and who needs what. But there's a whole group of women that are getting to that career where they're, you know, basically at the top of their game in their career. All of a sudden, they're starting menopause, and it's affecting them at work. Certainly affected me at work, and that's when I realised, no, I'm going to start talking about this, and I'm going to start doing something at work to promote menopause and the symptoms from it, because there's a lot of other women that don't even realise, like me, that they're in menopause. They just think, you know, they're losing it.
Yeah, and it's really common, isn't it?
Oh. Sorry, Michelle. Go on, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, here in the UK, I mean, we go for smear tests with the GP, the nurse, generally about every 3 years, I think, once you post 30 or something. And nobody has ever mentioned to me, and I know I've spoken to other people, that it's never been a conversation, menopause or symptoms or things that you might experience when you're coming close to that sort of time, that would kind of be a bit of an indicator to say that you're, you know, that this is what's happening, and there is support and there is help and there are things you can do to help yourself. And certainly in line with women hitting sort of like perimenopause and menopause. I mean, I've the stats, and I've really just seen the stats in the UK. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but, like, you know, so many women are leaving the workforce, or like there's so many more divorces, and there's just so much more upheaval because maybe women aren't being supported and they don't know what's actually happening. And so that fight or flight, I've experienced it myself, Kerstin, the anxiety and the panic attacks, health anxiety and stuff. And it is absolutely draining and scary.
Yeah,
we need the support. We need to know what's happening so we can kind of go, okay, I feel really shit, but if I do this, and this, I'll be on the way to feeling much better. But without knowing what to do to make yourself feel better, it can be quite a scary place to be.
And also, I think that the impact that it's had on, well, I know on my marriage, I mean, I'm been married for, you know, almost 28 years. Well, been with my husband for almost 28 years. And, like, he's a wonderful, caring man, but, you know, like, he sometimes used to get really shitty and say, you know, for Christ's sake, just get over it. Just move, you know, what's wrong with you? Like, and I don't want to be touched. And, you know, and I don't, even just things like, you know, if he's sitting there and he's eating and he's, the spoon, hitting the,
yeah.
you know, like, I just have to leave the room because I'm going to lose.
Yeah, totally feel that, yeah.
Yeah, and I tried to say to him, you know, you cannot comprehend, because my husband is the most positive. He doesn't get depressed. He doesn't get anxious. He's happy-go-lucky. He's always happy, and it shits me sometimes. And he just cannot comprehend how it's, like I say to him, it's not just a down day. It's just I don't just have the blues. You know, like, don't tell me to snap out of it or it'll be all right. I said, because it's not about it'll be all right. It's about a physical feeling of you're scared, you're anxious. You don't want to, you don't want to feel like this. You don't want panic attacks, and you don't even know why they're happening. And that's the physical part of menopause that's really difficult. And that's what I want women to understand. Sometimes you can't do anything about it. There's no medication, there's no self-talk, there's no nothing. You're going to get a physical symptom. But if you actually understand what the symptom is, like, I can sit there and go, right, I'm getting, you know, I've just had to up my hormones because I noticed I started getting the night sweats again. Not as bad, but it was coming through. And that's another thing. Like I said to my doctor, well, how long do I stay on this? How do I know when I need to up it? You know, nobody's telling me these things.
No.
And, you know, it's like trial and error. And that's what I say to women. And that's what I say to my girlfriends. It is trial and error. You have to start to get to really know your own body, because you have to be your own advocate.
Yeah.
You have to go, okay, I'm having a symptom and it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll get through this symptom. It's all right. Don't freak out.
Yeah.
You're in the shopping centre. You're starting to feel the panic coming. I mean, I get that breathing happen. People must look at me like I'm an idiot. I'm pushing a trolley around and I'm going, you know, doing my breathing work and, you know, doing sort of people looking at me. And I'm, you know, and I think you get to a certain age and you think, you know what, I don't give a shit. You can look. Because
Who cares?
I'm going through, and this is what I need to do. I just don't care.
Yeah.
So don't be scared of the symptom, but educate yourself about what it is, what you can do about some of your symptoms to alleviate them, and be kind on yourself. And it's okay to talk to people. Like I say at work now, I say to my boss, like, he'll go, oh, you all right? You look a bit, I'm having a shit day today. I'm in a bad mood.
Yes.
I don't know why. I can't pinpoint it. I said, you know, I've my hormones are up and down. And he goes, oh, you're on hormone replacement. I said, I know, but that doesn't make you feel fantastic.
It's not a magic pill, is it?
No.
Everyone seems to think it's this magic pill, and it really isn't.
No, it's not. You still get symptoms. You still feel like crap. So when I'm like that, I just ring up and say, I've got to work from home today, because if I come in there, I'm just going to make everybody, you know, it's going to be a difficult day for everyone. So I'll just work from home.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine. And I'm open at work about it. Not that, you know, within my team, I tell people I've got young girls working there, and I'll say, you know,
need to know.
Yeah, educating people.
Yes.
You know, they've got wives, it's going to happen to them. So I'm just open to it.
So Kerstin, I'm really curious, because obviously you're in Australia, we're in the UK, and like, I feel like all we ever talk about is menopause, but that's because we do the podcast and we're really interested in it. But I feel like the NHS is really getting together with how they work with the menopause, and there's a lot of more menopause stuff going on now. People are a bit more involved with things in the local areas. But what I'm hearing from you is that there was nothing in your area, unless you were specifically going and looking for a paid service.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, look, now, and I would say only in the last 12 months, I've really seen a ramp up of education, because people are doing podcasts like yourself. People are talking about it at work. You know, I work in a HR area, so I'm always interacting with people. And when I come across someone that's, you know, probably my age and not feeling great and going through all sorts of things, I say to them, you know, are you perimenopause? You know, are you in menopause? Yeah. And we're having this conversation, but I think the big takeaway for me is, when I talk to people, is that menopause can create long-term medical issues. So I think that's what people are starting to talk about now. It's not just, menopause and you'll have symptoms. But people with menopause, if they don't take medication, if they don't do certain things, they can end up with, heart issues. They cannot end up with mental health issues. So menopause creates symptoms that actually can turn into long-term medical issues. And I think that's what people are talking about now, is with HRT. That there was such a stigma before. Now they're saying it actually, can be safe for certain people and can be quite beneficial for your overall health. So I have really seen a turnaround, and I don't live in Sydney. I live in Canberra, which is, it's the capital of Australia, but it's a very, it's quite a small place. And, the majority of experts, they're in Sydney or they're in Melbourne or they're in Queensland. But now I think, because we are an ageing population and we've come through where we're vocal now, whereas my mother would not have been vocal.
Yes.
And I think that's the turning point, that we're actually okay to say, I'm in menopause. I'm still a vibrant, attractive person and want to live life, but I'm in menopause. Menopause is not just somebody in their 80s or 90s. We're still young, active women that want to maintain that, and we're okay to talk about it.
Definitely. And I think also, I don't know how you felt, but I think sounds like you felt the same. The reason that Lou and I started this podcast was because of our own experiences. And at that point, while there was stuff out there, and actually in the UK and with the internet, we're kind of flooded with stuff now. But unless you knew that you were in perimenopause or menopause, you wouldn't have looked at perimenopause and menopause stuff. So like you with the heart symptoms, me and the sort of the anxiety, I had anxiety and panic attacks and all those sorts of things. And like you, I just thought I was losing my shit.
Yeah.
I had no idea that any of those symptoms were perimenopause or menopause or whatever. And so while there's loads of stuff and you can get swamped when you're looking for it, if you don't know, then how can you know? And why would you? My sister's 3 years younger than me, and I was about 44, 45 when it started to kick in. And so she was only early 40s, and she said, Michelle, have you thought about, speaking to someone about your hormones? And I was like, oh, don't be ridiculous. I'm 43. That doesn't happen till your early 50s, because that's what we've been taught to think. Menopause happens when we kind of like early 50s. I mean, I'm 50 now. But the whole thing about starting the podcast and being a bit more vocal about it is that, people we don't know. We didn't know, and we didn't expect the symptoms, and we didn't expect it to be like this. Exactly like you when you said, Kerstin, about expecting it to be hot flushes, thinking, okay, I might have some hot flushes. My periods might become a bit more erratic. And then they'll stop, and then I won't have a period, and then boom, that's it, carry on, life will just be the same. But nothing kind of prepares you for the roller coaster bit in the middle where you've got to fathom it all.
Yeah, exactly. And and like you were saying, HRT is not the be all and end all, but it can really help with certain symptoms, but it also can give your body what it needs to a certain extent. You still got to, and that's why I say to all my friends, like, go to a dietitian, get your bloods done, see, are you absorbing enough minerals? Because if you, like, I was, B12 deficient, which can really muck around with, your mental health and all those sorts of things as well. So you start to lose mineral, you start to lose things. So it's about supporting yourself the best way you can, not just with HRT, but actually look at your health holistically.
Yes.
But I think our generation now is very lucky, because they will be educated by the time they get to, menopause. Where, like I said, we probably grew up in a time where I'd never heard anybody talking about menopause. None of my mothers would have ever met it. They just get on with it.
Yes.
Because, I can't imagine my mother ever saying to my father, oh, I'm in, menopause and I feel like crap.
Yeah.
It would have been, what?
But a lot of us are working, you know, a lot of women are now working for a lot longer and working full time, you know, and dealing with all the other stuff, like the home life and all that kind of thing as well. And, you know, kids aren't moving out as quickly as they used to. So it's having everybody at home. Things are so much different now than they were for our parents' generation.
Oh, absolutely. And like, I have a 32-year-old son, and, you know, sometimes he'll talk to me and I say, you know, I just don't feel well today. It's menopause. And he's like, what? And I said, well, menopause, mate. And then, you know, I explained it to him.
Yes.
This is what it is, you know. This is what, you know, some women are going through, and some women are going through it very early. Like, I know better women in their 30s that start going through these things. So this generation will be educated.
Yes.
And the work you do is so important, because it's not just us old girls that are listening to this, it's the young girls too. They're all like, okay, I'm going to be prepared for that now, and I'm going to understand what's happening. So I still have bad days. Like, I still have days, and it's not so much on a physical aspect, but mentally. I still get that mental, you know, where a panic will just come up or my heart will start racing, and, you know, but now I'm a lot more in tune to it. It's like, it's okay, breathing, just settle down, it'll pass. Because what I didn't realise as well, a lot of women, when they're in menopause, these heart palpitations can actually be like adrenaline surges from, you know, you get hypersensitive to sugars as well.
Yeah.
So you tolerate
that out, isn't it?
Yeah, or like a histamine response, things like that. So not everything, like, and I don't say to people, oh, it must be menopause. I think you need to still, you know, talk to your doctor if you're experiencing things that feel very uncomfortable for you. There's a multitude of people with menopause. Try and find someone that you feel comfortable with, that you can talk to and get answers. Because once you have answers, you have that reassurance. And once you have a bit of reassurance, you settle down.
Yes, you do.
You know,
you really do.
Yeah. And anxiety, I think, is the worst part of it for me.
Yes, it was for me, massively. Yeah, and that was the bit that made me feel like I was falling off of the planet. And the fact that it was just raged on all day. It never kind of gave up. Yeah. And so, like you're saying, that like reassurance when you're speaking to somebody, and I ended up going to a private health menopause service here in the UK, and when I spoke to them and told them how I felt, they said to me, they almost laughed. They didn't, obviously, but they were like, oh my God, you are so perimenopausal. And the relief I felt my whole body go, oh my God, thank God I'm not losing my shit. Because I just didn't know what was going to happen. And so just having that person say, oh my God, it's perimenopause, you can go, okay, I can park it. Now I can start to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it is about reassurance. And that's why so many women are out there scrolling on their phone, looking for just that little piece of, this is normal. It's okay. Don't be scared. And that's why on Facebook, there's a multitude of menopause groups.
Oh, gosh, yes. And people talking about their symptoms and talking about what's helped them and what they've done. You know, I mean, and like, you know, some people are HRT, other people, you know, their diet and seed cycling and like journaling and like things like yoga and exercise, increasing your water and all those sorts of things. But you kind of have to look at all of it, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm on HRT and have been since, it must be about 4 or 5 years now. But, you know, I've noticed this last couple of weeks, every now and again, I'm getting these little palpitations. I've not had them in about 4 years, but they've started to kind of like bubble up. But whereas before that would kind of freak me out, now I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just wait for it to go. It's all fine. And I think not having the panic with it makes me feel really calm about it. And then it passes a lot quicker than it would have done.
Oh, exactly. And, you know, for me, probably similar to you, as soon as I'd get that, it'd just go through the roof from there.
Yes.
I'd drive into work, I'd start getting it, and I'd turn around and I'd come home because
I've done that before.
I couldn't cope sitting at work feeling so scared and so anxious. At least if I was at home, I felt safe. In my house,
Yes.
I felt safe.
Yes.
And,
100%.
you know, I would say to my boss, I've driven to work and I've got panic. And I've been very lucky in that respect because I've been very open with my work about how I feel and how it affects me and how it affects my work. And they've been great about it. And I think not everybody experiences that, and that's really sad.
No.
You know, there's some work areas where people just don't have the luxury to turn around and go home and work from home.
No.
And as you said, HRT for some people might be great, and some people, they don't need it or they don't want it. And
Exactly.
they've got to find what works. But in finding what works, there should be open and available support for people to go and find things out. It should not be this hard.
No,
and
it should.
That's starting to get a lot better. And look, it's expensive. I mean, I don't know the hospital system here and the health system here is pretty good, but, you know, to get in to see people, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And not everybody is able to afford that. So, and that's a really sad thing too.
Yes.
That, you know, and that can't experience the same level of care and support due to financial restraints.
And also, Kerstin, you mentioned that you went to see a dietitian as well. So you were, you know, looking at it all holistically. But again, that's cost, isn't it? It's going to see a specialist to help work through, you know, things that are going to help you.
Yeah.
So take us through that a little bit. What were the kind of changes that you made to your diet?
Yeah, definitely. So what sort of prompted me to go to a dietitian is when I started to get this burning throat sensation, and I thought, what's going on? And then every time I ate something, I was getting reflux and I was getting heartburn and I was getting constipated, you know, for 4 or 5 days and just feeling so uncomfortable. And it was like that. And just before Christmas, I'd been really stressing out about some situations that were going on. And it was like my whole sort of nervous system just started playing up. So I went to a dietitian and she was so good, and she explained to me, look, when you're stressed, this is what is actually happening to your body. And if you've had chronic stress for a long time, all of a sudden it starts to play out and your digestion system will change. It really slows down. You may not have enough stomach acid, which a lot of people think when you get this reflux, it's a stomach acid thing, you've got too much. But actually, your body starts to stop producing it. Your vagus nerve shuts that all down. So when I went and saw her and I explained, you know, she did my whole history of everything. And she said, look, you've been in chronic stress for a long time. So what we need to do is rebuild some calmness in your body.
Yeah.
We need to look at some supplements. She looked at my bloods and she said, well, look, you know, you're not taking enough of this. You don't have enough of this. You've got too much of that. Looked at my whole diet, which was pretty good. I'm pretty good with my diet, but I wasn't eating enough. That was the problem. When I'm stressed, I eat.
Yeah.
So I wasn't eating
I don't
enough.
eat either.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It was about, you know, this is what you need to eat. And it's not expensive. Like she said, you don't need to go and get all this organic stuff or do anything like that. It's just about eating sensible. It's eating at certain times of the day, not overeating, but having enough nutrients, because if your body's not getting nutrients, you'll start to see the effects in your brain fog, your anxiety, your depression, all that sort of thing. So that really made a lot of sense to me. So I sort of went on an eating plan and gave me a few supplements, nothing, you know, too over the top. And she said to me, and I hadn't really ever done this before, but she said, look, there's some really good online meditation and breathing exercises. And she said, I know a lot of people go, oh, that's just bullshit, right? It doesn't do anything. And she said, it really does. It really can give you purpose and calmness that your body needs.
Yes.
She pointed me out to a few things online where you can meditation and do whatever. And now in the morning, I get up. Well, I don't actually get up. My alarm goes off. I lie there and I put on my meditation and I do some breathing and I listen to that. Then I get up and I sort of start my day that way. And I've been eating better. I've been getting a lot more fluids into me as well, because I was really sort of, when I thought, Christ, I'm not drinking enough water during the day either. And just started a routine of just being healthier. Nothing crazy, but just understanding what my body
needed. Yes. Yeah.
And you're not going to need supplements forever, because what we're doing is we're incorporating foods that your body needs. But if we don't have that, we need to start building that up with some supplements. And yes, of course, that can all be quite expensive. And, you know, and I am in a lucky situation that I can afford it. But even still, there is a lot of support for people. You know, a lot of the doctors provide, you know, like a dietitian service.
Yeah. Okay.
That you go to and have a few sessions there, and your first session, you know, can be, especially if you're on a pension or something like that, or you're not working, that's very discounted, or you may not even have to pay at all. So I have found that to be an eye-opener for me, because all I was thinking, I just need HRT and that's going to solve this and that's going to solve everything. And I wasn't looking at my whole body, everything else I need to maintain mental health clarity. And as you know, and if you don't poo, you don't feel very well.
No, you don't, because you are full of.
Exactly. So I really need situation out. And luckily, you know, and things have started to happen for me, and it's, you know, and I'm feeling good. But I think personally, I'll always have anxiety, because you can't unknow anxiety, right? Once you've had it, once it's come along, it's always there. You've just got to manage it. And, you know, I still have days where I do get anxiety, but I'm not scared of it anymore.
Yeah, and that's a powerful place to be in with it, isn't it? When you don't feel scared of it anymore.
Yeah.
I had really bad anxiety, which is why I ended up going on HRT, because I'd always been very much, no, I won't take a paracetamol. No, I don't take antibiotics. No, I won't do this. I won't do that. But it was, I was just felt really awful. So I did go on the HRT, and I had like the estrogen and progesterone element of it, which didn't really massively help the anxiety as such. But then I started taking a small amount of testosterone.
Yeah.
And that really, really helped my mental health symptoms. But again, it's so complex. And Lou and I talk about this because at the time we were all locked up as well, because it was during COVID and being on furlough, and so not going into work, not seeing people. And, you know, there's so many different complexities that lead us to be at the point where we start to experience perimenopause, that half of the game is fathoming out what's caused what.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we've had so many life experiences, haven't we? But yeah, I mean, you know, so for me, I found the testosterone was really, really helpful with the anxiety, almost to the point where I felt like, but also I'd done a lot of work on myself. So I'd had loads of hypnotherapy. Because I thought that would help. So yeah, I mean, it's just so complex. And I think going back to what you said about talking to your son about it and talking about menopause and stuff, like Lou talks to her children about it. I talk to mine. I've got 3 sons. I talk to them. One of my sons does the editing for the podcast. And so they're really aware of menopause, perimenopause, the mental health struggles, the physical struggles. And I think what you're doing at work and talking about it, if we were all kind of just doing that, we are helping the next level of women who come, you know, after us or beside us, or that are even gone past menopause and are still not sure what happened. It's those conversations, isn't it?
Well, it is. And I suppose my next journey will be, you know, I'm still figuring out, you know, how long do you take HRT for? Like, is it an ongoing thing? You know, what happens when you get to a certain age? Do you still need it? Like, you know, I've read some people have, you know, they're still getting symptoms 10 years in. I don't know. At the moment, I'm just, whenever something comes along, I feel strong enough to manage it and deal with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are aging, so things are going to happen and they may not be related to menopause, but my mind now is strong enough to deal with whatever's coming along. And that's where I need to be, because I find that is the hardest thing since I've gotten into menopause is my mental resilience just went downhill.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, so I need to be able to cope if I get some other illness that's not even related to menopause. I need to be mentally strong enough for, you know, when something happens to my mother, or, you know, if there's a family tragedy, I've got to build back resilience and not be scared of every little shit thing that comes along. And to me, that's been created by menopause, and that's the anxiety and the panic. Yeah. And like I said, you can't unknow it once it happens to you. So I have to, that's an ongoing symptom that I will always have to manage.
Yeah.
And that's my focus at the moment. So if I can get my health and my body ticking along okay, you know, I can manage and I understand the anxiety and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like shit when it happens, and I do still get, you know, it can be scary, and it you know, it can last for a couple of days, but I know I'm okay. I know I will be okay. I won't spiral like I used to. And, you know, and
and that's the case.
Yeah, I'd be in it for weeks. My heart would be racing for weeks sometimes. Yeah. And
it does sound like, Kerstin, that this time has brought a period of where you've become quite knowing of what's going on in your own body, and you've had to become your own advocate, haven't you?
Yeah.
And be proactive to what happens next for you. So it feels like that's what I'm kind of hearing in what you're saying, is that this has kind of brought that about for you, and then you can go and share that with other people.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I still even say to my doctor, because when this was all happening, I was at the doctor like every second or third day, like, what's happening to me, what's going on? And I said to him, you know, you must think I'm mad. And he said, no. He said, lots of people go through this. Lots of women are the same. And I thought, oh my God, what a horrible thing for people have to get to this point. Yeah. You know, that at the doctor every second day trying to figure out what the bloody hell's going on with them. Why, you know, and I said to him, well, maybe there needs to be something out here in the surgery staring people in the face that, you know, it says, are you experiencing this, this and this? Are you this age? You may be in menopause, right?
Yeah. And make menopause and perimenopause tiny at the bottom, but the symptoms big. Because, you know, I would never have walked into the doctor's surgery. I'd have seen a perimenopause or menopause poster and gone, oh, that's for old people. I would never have thought in my 40s it was me. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, going back to, there's so much information now out there, if you know that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So the power kind of lies, what I'm hearing is, and I know it's true for me, the power lies in knowing why those bodily changes are happening.
Yeah. But I think an education strategy should be about people that have no idea. How do we reach people that have no idea and help them before it becomes an issue for them? And that's why, like I said to my doctor, well, I should be able to walk into the surgery here, sit in the waiting room, and there should be something there that triggers, oh, look, I've got those symptoms.
Yeah.
And more questions, because it shouldn't come down to, I think I'm losing my freaking mind.
No, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't.
Stage before somebody says, oh, here's some information.
It sounds like that might be a project, Kerstin.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to sort of advocate for my doctor to, you know, to see wherever he gets his information from for the surgery. Maybe he can talk to them about, you know, how do you actually put this in people's faces before it becomes such a devastating issue for them?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a conversation with my doctor because, he was happy to prescribe me the estrogen and progesterone element, but not the testosterone. And I said to you, didn't I, Lou? And I think I spoke about it on the podcast. I was getting my testosterone privately, but I kept hounding my poor GP so that he would give me the testosterone, because I thought I was in a position where I could just pay privately to get the testosterone.
but only just. But I knew that there were so many other people, because I felt the benefits of testosterone for my mental health. I knew there was going to be, if it was happening to me, and I've got a great support network, great family, lovely friends, and I'm quite well educated and all the rest of it. But, so if it was going to help me, it was bound to help somebody else. But the surgery didn't like to give it. They're very reluctant to give it to women. They'll happily give it out to guys. And so I kept going on at him about, give it me. So they've started to give it to me, but they'll only give me a couple of months supply. But it's having those conversations. And I've even said to him about having leaflets, maybe, so that when women go for their smear test, there's a leaflet very much like what you're saying, because exactly that, if it says menopause and perimenopause on it, it's just not gonna hit the people that don't realize that's what's happening.
Exactly.
So it sounds like a great idea. Please keep us in touch with that, because I'm really interested in that, because of some of the project stuff I'm doing here. I'd be really great to hear how you get on with that.
I definitely will. And I mean, I think there's another part of it too, as I wanted to touch on, is when it comes to your libido as well, and other things like that, that women are experiencing with their marriages. I mean, I remember when the doctor first said, just tweak lifestyle changes. And I said, lifestyle? I said, I don't have a freaking lifestyle. I don't go anywhere. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't leave the house. I go to work. I said, I don't have a lifestyle because of this. So there's not much more I can tweak to, make myself feel better. And, I don't have a libido. I just have nothing.
Yeah.
I honestly, and my husband's a very patient. I can't even think about it. Like, it's just, it's non-existent. And I think in my marriage, we've just gotten used to that. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to feel like that or be like that. And I do need to explore, and maybe testosterone, maybe some other things, and I've heard some really good stories about how it helped a lot of women in that sense. And I mean, but to me, when I was going through this, that was absolutely the last thing.
Same here. I don't think I went anywhere near my husband for such a long time. And like you, he's such a really kind, patient, loving man. But the testosterone for me was more about the mental health stuff. Yeah. But naturally, that then increased the other, and now all of that is good too. So I'd say that's definitely helped me. Sorry, my sister will be listening to this.
Well, and in my circumstance, I think we've just resigned ourselves to the fact that, and I don't want it just to be my choice, and I don't want it to be something that is, it has to be this way because of me, of what I'm going through. But, we're best friends. We have a fantastic relationship, and we've sort of gotten to the fact that that's not even an issue anymore. But I still want there to be that want and that need and that desire. And so that's probably the next hurdle that I will cross when I feel 100%.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not a big deal, but you never think as you're getting old, as you're growing through your marriage and whatever, you never think that that's just not going to be an option.
No. So it's just something else to have to work out, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think my husband's always said to me, I just want you to be healthy and happy, and that's what's important in our relationship, and and that's wonderful. But I know other women, and I've read in forums, other women really, are struggling with that, and their partners are really struggling with that. So if women are going through that, there's got to be some options there for them as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, aren't we lucky? All these things that get thrown at us all at once. It's like a clue, isn't it? You've got to follow the clues to work everything out. But, I mean, we spoke to some people as well who have talked about it and talked about the sort of like tougher side of perimenopause and menopause, and then the things that they've learned from going through it and how they've used them to sort of change what they're doing in their life, like with the food and stuff, and kind of like they're really noticing if they've had a bad food day or if they have had a couple of gin and tonics, or so it's almost like you relearn your body and you kind of know what to do to her to make her calm and happy and like sort of like thrive in the environment that she's kind of living in now. Don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like going to diet, learning all the stuff about food and supplements and everything like that, and like the breathing, the breath work, and the mindfulness, and it all helps us, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I think as women, we go through life, like for me in my marriage, I live with my husband, and I can see from the time that I met him till now, nothing's really changed for him. He can still eat what he wants. He can still drink what he wants. Yeah. He still feels mentally the clarity and so forth he did when, he was in his 20s or in his 30s. Nothing changes. For me, and for most women that, are going through this, we've had so many dramatic changes. We can't eat the same way. Maybe we can't drink like we used to, or we can't do the things we want to.
Yeah.
But I'm living with a person that has never changed.
Yes.
He's never been anything, his mental health has been fine. He physically feels fine. Everything is the same. But for me, everything has changed.
Yeah.
Everything has changed. And I have come to the fact I'm never going to be or feel like I did 5-10 years ago. It's not going to happen. But, we're living with people that they don't understand that because they haven't changed at all.
Yeah.
But even with your normal day-to-day life and stuff, Kerstin, like when we're having babies and we're having periods every month, and we are constantly like this, aren't we? So we kind of need that stability. I don't know what I'd do without the stability of my husband, because I'm like this and he's just like this. Yeah. That's what I need.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, but it's just that is it exactly. So it's not just the fact that we've got to this time of life and we're struggling with all this. We've been dealing with this for so long, and it just I feel like we get to a sensitivity level where we just can't deal with it anymore, and it just our bodies are just crying out for some support.
And trying to explain to someone that feels happy and secure and physically well every day of their life, unless they've got a cold or something, is, so I take my hat off to my husband, honestly, because he just is my reality check. He's but I've come to the fact, because I look at a lot of the forums and they're saying, I just want to feel like I used to. And my takeaway is I'm never going to, but I can still feel good and I can still be happy.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be like I used to. And I think don't strive for that anymore. Start realising this is what it is now, and this is how I have to move forward, because I'm not going to be that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Life is still going to be great, and I can still work with this and what I've got, but don't strive to feel like you did when you were 10 years, younger, or before menopause or perimenopause hit, because it's not realistic. And if you're looking for that, I mean, for some people it may happen. I don't know. But for me, I know. I can't be that anymore, and I'm not going to. So just give up on it. You're not going to be 40. You're not going to be feeling like that. This is the new norm for you, and, flourish with it, thrive.
Exactly, yeah. And with that comes a lot of wisdom as well, though, doesn't it, Kerstin?
Yeah.
The wisdom that you've gathered over that last 10 years. I don't think I'd want to go back to 40 now.
No, I don't. I wouldn't either.
In the way that I've learnt so much in the last 10 years. Yes, I'd like my 40-year-old body back, but the wisdom that I've got, I think I would have to weigh it up a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I always think, before I felt anxiety, because I think for me that was the worst thing that's happened to me is you can't unknow a panic, you can't unknow anxiety. And, you know, even when you just get you feel a bit faint if you're out or something, and then it starts to spark up. I always used to think, I just want not to feel that. I can't, you know, when I was younger, I never felt like that. I was happy-go-lucky and I didn't care, and I never had worry or panic. I want to feel like that again. But I'm not going to. So this is what I've got, and this is how I have to live with that. And once I resolved that with myself, that's when I started moving forward, that I've got anxiety, it's never going away, but I can manage it. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people are looking to, I don't ever want to have anxiety again. And I'm not talking about, you know, anxiety when you've got to do a test or you've got to do, you know, talking
That's
about
normal level, isn't it? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So I'm just hoping that with the podcast that women out there go, okay, it is what it is now. How do I deal with it?
Yeah. How do I live
my life with it there? And like I say, I mean, the testosterone kind of helped me, but also I'd had like about 8 or 9 months of hypnotherapy, which, you know, again, going back to that complexity, you can't say exactly which part of it helped. But, you know, like you said, you know, like with the breathing exercises and just like riding through when it's happening and knowing that, okay, you're experiencing it now, but, you know, it is going to end, and then you can carry on about your day. It's just kind of like educating yourself and learning about it, isn't it?
And I do take medication for it because I need to. And it helps me and it makes me feel better, and so I'm going to take it.
Yeah. We have to do the things that work for us, don't we? You know, none of us are experts, and Lou and I say this. None of us are experts. We're only experts at our own experiences. You know, and yeah, exactly like you're saying with the podcast and the conversations that you're having, the conversations that we're having. If we can all just be that little bit more aware, then we're not going to find ourselves in those such bad places, are we?
Exactly. So and I think we can only experience our own experience, and I can't tell people what they should or shouldn't do or make it better for them, but I can say to people, don't be scared.
Yeah.
We've all been through it. And it might seem like this is never going to end and it's never going to go away. Be an advocate for yourself.
Yes.
You can get through it. Yes, you're not going to, it's not going to be like it was before this happened.
Yeah.
But life is good, you know, and you can manage it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, and that feels like a really good message to end it on today. Thank you so much, Kerstin. It's been really lovely to talk to you. What time is it now? What time
I'm
is it on now?
Probably about at night time. It's probably, I don't know, if it's been an hour, it's probably about 9:30 or something here.
Yeah, so 9:30 at night, and we're at 10:20 in the morning. So we'll let you get on now.
Opposite ends of the day. Well, thanks ever so much for talking to us, Kerstin. Really, really enjoyed that.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me.
It's been lovely talking to you, Kerstin. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, feel free to email us at info@wildwiseandcurious.com or reach out on our socials at wild_wise_and_curious. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Stay curious and we'll see you next time.